Hey guys, today I'll show you how to create this armor inside of Blender. When I initially worked on this project, I was using an image reference to build the armor from the ground up, but I got some comments suggesting that it would be better if I used an SVG, remesh it, and then wrap it around the character, and it is way better, and I figured out how to do it, and I am going to share that knowledge with you. I'll be covering modeling, sculpting, texturing, and also adding the armature to the armor, so you could just go ahead and animate it after you watch this video. Down below in the description, you will find a link with the project files, which include the character and the SVG files you'll be needing for this project, so you can just download them and follow along this tutorial. I'll also add timestamps if you just want to skip to a specific section of this video. Before we jump into Blender, I want to quickly show you how to actually make your SVG files. In my case, I use Illustrator, and I've just opened it up. And the first thing I'm going to do is drag my image into Illustrator, and then I'm going to go to Image Trace and change the preset to Sketched Art. You could do this with any type of image, even if it's a sketch. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that the contrast between the black and the white should be strong enough so Illustrator knows how to build the vector. Otherwise, if it's not strong enough, you might get a purely black image. And to solve that, you could go to the menu over here and play around with the threshold, and also you could adjust the advanced settings. Once you're done, go to expand. And as I've selected the vector, I'm going to go ahead and click the artboard tool, and I'm going to click on the vector. This will automatically create the artboard around our vector. And then I'm going to go to File, Export, Export As, select the artboard. In my case, that's the second one, and export it. Click OK. And that's it. That's how I make my SVG file. So let's go ahead and open up Blender. So I'll go ahead and open up the project. And the first thing I want to do is set our Blender files. Go to Edit Preferences, Key Map, and make sure that the spacebar action is set to search. So when you press the spacebar, it will automatically toggle search. Now go to File, Import, SVG, and select the front part of our armor. Change the name. And then remove the collection. Now select the armor, press RX90, and let's scale it up. Go to Object Properties and change the color of the viewport display to something that just makes it a little bit more visible. Then grab the vector and go into Side View and move it by Y so you can position it in front of the character. Go back into Front View. And let me zoom in and scale it down a little bit more. I'm trying to align the vector to the armature because later on we'll be mirroring this mesh to create the full armor. So let's move it, scale it a little bit more. Something like this should be fine. And then let's apply our scale. Now what we want to do is remesh our armor because when you import an SVG, it imports as a curve. And if we go to Object, I'm just showing you this, you don't need to follow this. If you go to Object and Convert it, you will see that we have vertices only on the edge of our mesh, which is not sufficient enough to wrap the armor around the character. And you could say, let's add a remesh modifier. But since we're working with a 2D surface, and let me go to Modifiers, add a remesh modifier, and give it a value of 001. If we zoom in, you will notice that we have a very crooked edge that will be kind of difficult to work with further on. So what I like to do is go back to Curve. I want to go to Data, and extrude our curve by 0.01. Then go to Object, Convert Mesh, and in the Modifiers tab, add the Remesh modifier. Set it to Smooth and give it a depth of 10. Now let's apply it. And what we have to do now is reflatten our surface, and we can do that easily in Edit mode. Press A to select all, then S, Y, 0. What this does, it positions all of your vertices on the same y-axis. So right now they're on top of each other, and we need to clear this up by pressing spacebar and adding merge by distance. Let me zoom in so you can see how my mesh looks. Now let's go ahead and enable face orientation, and you can see that our normals are kind of messed up, and it's pretty easy to fix that again. Go to edit mode and go to mesh, normals, recalculate outside. I want to see, so the red part should be to the side of the character, and if you need to flip it, go to mesh, normals, flip. Now as we've selected our armor, make sure to press Shift S and choose cursor to selected, then press spacebar and add a lattice modifier. Go to data and change the resolution to 818. Shift select the armor and go into isolation view and press 1 for front view. Let's scale down the grid. And zoom so we see what we're doing here. I just want to fit the armor inside the grid. Something like that is good enough. Select the armor and shift select the grid. Press Ctrl P, object keep transform. So we parent our armor to the grid. And if we move the grid, our armor should be moving with it. Go back, select the armor. Go to modifiers and search for a lattice modifier. For object, select our lattice. And if you go into edit mode and select a vertex, you should be able to move the mesh with it. Now, if you're working with a smaller model, you could just add a shrink wrap modifier. And let me show you what I mean. So let's go to modifiers, search for shrink wrap and change it to project. Choose the axis of Y and let's select our character as the target. And then I want to go ahead and open up data and change the resolution to something like 30. And go into isolation so you see what it looks like. If you're using something smaller, this could be a good way to wrap it around a surface. But since we're using a bigger section of the character, I want to go ahead and actually deform the grid before I apply the shrink wrap modifier. So what I mean by this is, let me go back and reduce the resolution by 8. Go to the modifiers tab, disable the shrink wrap and change it to target normal project. And then I'm going to go into front view, press tab for edit mode, and select the top row of vertices. Make sure proportional editing is enabled. Let me go into the side, move them by the Y axis, so press GY. And make sure to make the proportional editing a little bit bigger. Somewhere around here is fine. Go into front view by pressing 1 and move them by the X axis. The next area I want to fix is around the neck. So let me toggle X-ray and select this 4 vertices in the corner. Disable X-ray mode and press RZ to rotate it by the Z axis. Make the proportional editing a little bit smaller. And something like this should be fine. Then let me move it by Y. Let's go to the front and then move it by X. Let's see how it's looking in the sides. That's good. The next part I want to work on is around the shoulders. So I'm going to select this side row of vertices. I want to rotate them by Z again. And then move them by Y. Make sure that you're not clipping the armor too much. Let's select this vertex over here and push it a bit closer to the shoulder. The next area I want to work on is this 4 vertices here. Let's move them by Y and then X. To fix this area here, I'll just select this vertex and move it on X. Then go back, move these 3 vertices by X. And then move by Y. Select these 3 vertices here and move them by Y. a little bit more. Select this vertex and press G Shift Z so you move it only on the Y and X axes. And this should be a very basic blocking out of the grid. So if I select it and go into isolation mode, you can see that we really slightly deformed this grid. And now if I enable the shrink wrap modifier, and let's select the armor and add a second shrink wrap modifier. So go to modifiers and add a shrink wrap modifier. Let's select your target and change the method to target normal project. Go ahead and add a solidify modifier. Change the offset to 1 and divide the thickness by 2. Then let's zoom in and you can see that the armor is wrapped really nicely around our character. I want to go ahead and fix some areas. So I'm going to select the lattice. I'm going to go in edit mode and I'm going to disable the shrink wrap modifier. And first area I want to work around is the shoulder. So I'll select this vertex and move it by Y. Something like this should be good. And the next area I want to work on is this here. So I'll select these two vertices and move them by Y. If you notice this clipping, don't worry about it because once we enable the shrink wrap modifier, it's going to be fixed. Let me move it back a little bit, not that much. And I want to move this area also by Z and this one a little bit further down. Enable the shrink wrap modifier and you can see that the clipping is fixed. I'll go out of edit mode. Select the armor and press Alt P, select clear and keep transformation. Then go ahead and apply the lattice and the shrink wrap modifiers. Keep the solidify for now. Let's just disable it. Then select the lattice, press X to delete, and we are done with the front part for now. The next thing we want to do is repeat the same process for the back side of the armor. Let's go to the back view by pressing Ctrl 1. File, import SVG, select armor back, again change the name, remove the collection and move it to the main one. As we've selected the armor, press RX90 and scale that up. It's still red because we have our orientation enabled. Press G to move it, go into side view and move it by Y so we position it behind the character. Ctrl 1 for back view, and I want to zoom in and see what I'm doing. I find this face orientation a bit annoying, so let's disable the face orientation. I want to copy the color of the front part of the viewport display to the back part, which means I go to Object Properties, Viewport Display, press Ctrl C on the color, then select the back and Ctrl V so we paste the same color. And let me move around the armor. A position like this is good. I'm just basically positioning it in a way that I want to wrap it later on. Now go into the side and make sure to apply the scale because I tend to forget applying my scale. Then go to extrude, give it a value of 0.001. Then go to Object, Convert, Mesh, and open the Modifier tab and add a Remesh modifier. Set it to smooth, give it a value of 10, and apply the modifier. Go into Edit mode, press A, S, Y, 0, and then let's merge by distance. Basically, we're just repeating the same process as we did for the front part. Enable the face orientation. Go to Mesh, Normals, and recalculate outside. The red part should be towards the body. Then as we've selected the armor, press Shift S and press Spacebar to add a lattice. Go to Data and change the values to 818. Shift select the armor. Go to Isolation. Zoom in so I see what I'm doing. And scale down the grid. just want to fit in the grid. I don't need it to be perfect. Then select the armor, shift select the grid, Control P, then go back, select the armor, go to modifiers, and search for a lattice modifier. Go to object and select your grid. Now if we go into edit mode, we should be able, yes, to move our mesh. So I'll go ahead and select the first row of vertices with proportional editing enabled and move it by Y. Somewhere here. The next area I want to work is the sides, so select this row. I'll rotate it slightly by Z-axis, and I'll move it by Y again. Let's select the last row of vertices. Press G, Y, I'll make the proportional editing a bit bigger. And position it closely. This should be good. Let's go and add a shrink wrap modifier. And change it to target normal project. Select our character as a target. Select our armor and add a shrink wrap modifier again. Select the target and change it to target normal project. Now we can go ahead and add a solidify modifier. Change the offset to 1 and divide the thickness by 2. And I want to enable the solidify of the front part. Now, as you see, they're not attaching really well. And for that, I'm going to go and fix up the backside. But I want to attach them by the neck area and by the shoulder area. To fix the backside, I will go to Data and bump up the resolution to 30. Then go to Modifiers, disable the Shrink Wrap modifier, and make sure that On Cage is enabled. And then I'm going to press Edit Mode to select the vertice by which I want to move the armor. Then I'm going to enable back the Shrink Wrap, and I'm going to move it. Let me zoom in so you see what I'm doing better. I'm just moving it here. The reason why I disable the shrink wrap modifier is that I find that it's kind of hard to select the vertices even if on cage is enabled, and that's why I just disable and enable so I can make sure that I'm selecting the right vertices. And let's go back and fix this area here. So select this for vertices, enable shrink wrap, and press G and move it closer to the area that I want to attach. Make sure that when you're moving around the armor, it's not overlapping, because I'm going to go ahead and bridge both of those sections. For that, I don't need them to be overlapping. I just need them to be close enough. I want to zoom out. Let's see how this is looking. Now that we are finished shaping the backside of the armor, I'm going to select it and press Alt-P and choose Clear and Keep Transformation. Then go apply the lattice modifier by pressing Ctrl-A and the shrink wrap modifier. Let's select the lattice and press X to delete it. Let me zoom in. Now I want to attach both these sides. I'm going to select the front part, then shift select the back side. Press Ctrl-J to join and go into isolation view. Disable the solidify modifier and go into top view by pressing 7 and zoom in. Toggle the X-ray mode and go into edit mode and box select this section that we're going to be working on. Press Ctrl-I to invert the selection and then press H to hide it. Let me zoom in. And what I want to do is just select a part of the edge and then merge it. So for that, I'm going to press Alt and try to select the edge. This is enough for now. I just need a few vertices to work with. Then press C for circle select, and by clicking the middle mouse, deselect some of the vertices. So this section is good enough for me. And I think there's something hiding here, so let me zoom out. And good. So let's go to Edge and select Bridge Edge Loops. Don't worry about it, we are going to fix this. Now the next thing I want to do is connect that area around the neck. I'm going to disable X-ray mode. Then I will enable it again. Go into edit mode, press Alt-H to unhide everything, and then again box select the section that we're going to work on. Hide it by Ctrl-I and then H. And let's out-click select the edge in this one. Press C for circle and deselect by holding the middle mouse. It doesn't need to be a perfect selection. Again, just something that we want to merge it by. Let's go to Edge, Bridge Edge Loops, Alt H to unhide everything. Then go and disable the X-ray mode. And what I want to do is smooth out this area. So I'm going to go to Sculpt mode and make sure to enable dynamic topology. Choose the smooth tool and just quickly brush over these areas so we give it a better shape than what it was. Just quickly smooth. It does not need to be perfect because we are going to be sculpting this later on. Then go back into object mode and enable the solidify modifier. Okay, so now that both sides are attached, I want to mirror the armor, and I want to add one last shrink wrap modifier because if you notice, the surface of our armor is looking a bit blocked out, and that's because our character has a subdivision of 1, but we'll fix this later on. For now, I just want to add a shrink wrap modifier, move it above the solidify, and select our character. This time, near a surface point is enough. Let me move to the front. And then I will add a mirror modifier and move it above the solidify. Select our character as the mirror object. Go into front view. And I want to fix up these areas that aren't attached. I'm going to enable on cage for both shrink wrap, mirror, and also the solidify modifier. Disable the solidify and go into isolation view. Then I will press C for circle select and select this edge, or at least this part. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And as I have proportional editing enabled, I will start rotating this edge. So I straighten it out a little bit, and then I'll move it by X, and I'll press Shift. You can see that it's starting to attach. And I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to touch up the areas because if I continue on moving it by X, then it will start overlapping. So I'll go ahead and select this vertex down below and make sure that the proportional editing is a bit bigger so it influences the areas that we want to attach. And do the same for the top area. So let me select this vertex, make the proportional editing so it fits the area that I'm working on, and move it by X and just stitch it up. This is looking good. It's not perfect, but it's still better than it was. Now over here below, I have both of these surfaces overlapping. So I'm gonna go ahead and disable the mirror modifier. Let me try to alt select this edge. Okay, I was able to select it. Let's move it by X a little bit and enable back the mirror modifier. And the next thing I want to do is rotate so I kind of straighten up those edges. Again, pressing Shift and then Shift X. And let me zoom in so I see what I'm doing. Again, selecting the lower vertices, making the proportional editing bigger so it fits the area, and moving it by X and slowly attaching the areas. That's good. And this is the final area that we're going to be working on. Press X, Shift, and stitch it up. It's kind of satisfying to do this. Okay, let me zoom out and enable the solidify modifier. There are some overlapping surfaces. You can notice this area is here, but once we enable the mirror modifier, we're going to merge the vertices, so we won't have that issue of the solidify modifier. And what I want to do now is smooth out the surface of the armor by bumping up the subdivision of our character. Then select the armor, apply the shrink wrap and the mirror modifier. Open up edit mode, press A to select everything, and then merge by distance. You can see that there were several vertices that were overlapping, and this clears out the area that we had an issue with earlier. Now let me just check the armor, and if I'm happy with it, I want to right-click Shade Smooth, and then I'll go and apply the Solidify modifier. And our armor is almost done. because if we zoom into the armor, you can notice that we don't have any edge loops on the sides that were extruded. And for us, that's not good, because if we're going to sculpt it, these sides are just going to collapse. We need more geometry. What you could do is go ahead, open edit mode, press Ctrl R, and edge loop all of these sections. But I find that it's easier if I just add one final remesh modifier. So let's go to modifiers, search, and write down remesh. Change it to smooth, give it a depth of 10, and then apply it by pressing Ctrl A. And one last thing I want to do before sculpting is select the armor, press spacebar, and write down origin to geometry. Selected. And the reason why we're doing this is now when we enter sculpt mode and enable the mirror by x-axis, let me choose something to draw with. If I go ahead and draw something, it will be mirrored perfectly on the armor. And that's because we set our axes correctly. First tool I want to work with is our smooth tool. And let me change the value to 0.4 and make the brush roll this side, and I will start smoothing out the edges. If we hadn't remeshed or added edge loops to the sides that were extruded, these edges right now will just overlap. So in case that's happening to you, you most probably didn't add the edge loops or forgot the final remesh. If you've made it so far along and you are just smoothing out the armor, I want to tell you that you are doing amazing, because this is the fifth time in which I'm making this tutorial. And if it seems to you that I am making no mistakes and I'm just working so fast, it's because I probably made this file more than 10 times, probably 50. I'm not proud of that, actually. Not proud of that at all. I'm kind of questioning my decisions right now. But I finished with smoothing out the armor, so I will continue on with explaining what I'm doing. I'm going to select the Draw Sharp tool, and I'm going to start drawing the main details of this armor. I will start with this opening here, and I'm gonna draw a line around it and kind of do this like swirly shape. Then from the intersection, I'm gonna start a second line, almost follow the first one, but kind of go into my own directions. I'm starting from somewhere, and you can see that this is like an intersection, and I'm using it to build more lines. Each line is following the other one, so it's kind of like wood grain, but not exactly. And I go in some areas again with the draw tool just to make them stronger. And wherever I intersect these lines are going to be future thorns. I'm going to change the saturation of this color because it's a bit hard for me to see what's going on. I want to just reduce the saturation. Something like this is okay. And I'll go back into sculpt mode. And I am just drawing these lines around the shape of the armor. And I'm kind of just enjoying this. Like, you could do whatever you want to do. This is the most creative part of this work. So you can make this your own, create whatever you like to create. And I will shut up because I've been talking a lot for the last, I don't know how many minutes, probably even more. Well, for you, for this tutorial, it's minutes, but for me, it's hours. So I'm going to shut up, and I am going to time-lapse this so you don't have to be watching another 30 minutes of me sculpting. So see you when I finish. Okay, so now that I'm finished with sculpting the main lines, I could just go ahead and start adding the thorns, but I want to quickly show you some other tools that I used when I was working on this project. And when I was working on it, something I forgot to mention is I was making very small lines. So I was really working in those details, having really fine lines, and that's why the result that you're seeing here might be a bit different from the result that I had while I was working on it. So the first tool I used was the draw tool, and I set the direction to minus, and the strength of 0.5 is okay. And I just started drawing in, maybe actually I will reduce the size a little bit, so give it a 0.3, and I just start drawing in a little bit more vents in the shape. Basically, I deepen the creases and make the shape a little bit more interesting. You can do this however you like. The next thing I do is I change it up to a plus, so I add more depth. The next tool I use is the crease polish to just pinch up the edges or the creases in some areas. Again, the only reason that I'm using these tools is just to create a little bit more interest in the shape and break up the shapes. And the last tool I used was the smooth tool and just smooth out some of the creases. So it's basically these three tools that I use to polish up the surface, which is the draw tool, crease sharp, and the smooth tool. That is enough to just polish up the details. And again, you don't even need to do that, but it will make the armor shine even more. Once I've sculpted and polished the armor, I want to go ahead and add the thorns. And for that, I'm going to use the snake hook tool. But I want to enable the dynamic topology when I use it because, just to show you, if I go and try to draw a thorn, at some moment it's going to start stretching out because we have a set of vertices that we're just dragging along, and at some point they will start stretching because we don't have enough vertices to support the shape that we want to create. To fix that, we go ahead and enable dynamic topology because it does exactly that. And I want to change the size to 4, and let me go and drag out a thorn now. And you can notice that it looks way better. If I go into edit mode, you will notice that the geometry is built around the thorn. It's not just stretched out vertices, as it would be if we don't enable it. And now I will just go ahead and draw the thorns in the lines that are kind of ending on the edges of the main shape, and draw out also all the intersections. They kind of already look like the base of a thorn, like this one here, and this one, also this one. And then also I'll go by the sides. So I'll just go ahead and time lapse this so you can see what I've done with the thorns. Okay, now that we have our thorns drawn, this is what the armor looks like. And I want to do one last thing before heading out to texturing, and that's decimating our armor. And for that, I'm going to use a simple decimate modifier. I want to go ahead and enable statistics. it's over 1 million vertices, which is too much. So I will give it a value of 0.05, and 70,000 is a good number for this. You could go even lower if you want to, but I find that 70,000 in this case works good enough for me. So then go ahead and apply the modifier. Now that we've optimized the armor, we can go and add our textures. But before I do that, I want to go to render properties and fix the viewport samples to 128, and then go down to color management and change it to AGX. Then I will enable viewport shading. Select the armor and Shift S to change cursor to selected, and then add in a area lamp. Move it up by Z. So we have our character light up, and then give it a power of 100. Oh, that's a bit strong. I'll move it further up. That's good enough. Now I want to add another panel. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to right click horizontal split, and I'm going to drag in the panel and open up shader editor. Select the armor and remove the old material. I'll disable the viewport overlays, and then I'll add a new material. And I want to add a geometry node. The reason I want to add a geometry node is because I want to use the pointiness of the geometry to separate the dents and the creases of this armor. And that's basically how I set up the material when I was working on this. Select pointiness, drag it, and add a color ramp. Then Control Shift and click on the color ramp so you can see what we're doing with it. And I want to drag up the black and the white values, change to ease. Now you can see that this is controlling how much we are separating both areas. And as you've probably figured out, we are going to use this as a mix shader. But before that, I want to duplicate the principled BSDF, and then I'm going to go and add a mix shader. I'm going to change the second color to black and attach both to shaders and use the color ramp as the factor by which I'm going to separate both. And now you can see that if I tweak the values a little bit more, you can see how that separation is showing up on this texture. Now for the black texture, I used a metallic surface, so I'm going to bump up the metallic. And I also used a golden color, so I'm going to change it to a yellow. I'm going to put the roughness down. And for the other side, I wanted to create somewhat of a ceramic material. So I'm going to put the roughness down, and I'm going to add a little bit of subsurface, also add a little bit of color. And you can see that this is how it's texturing out. And this is really the basic setup of the textures. You could also add your own textures. You can add your own roughness or your own bumps, whatever you decide. But to quickly show you how to add a bump, I'm just gonna search for a noise texture, attach the factor to a color ramp, then Control Shift click on the color ramp. And again, I want to move around the values. I'll give it a scale of 5,000 and bump up the detail to 15, and then fix up the color ramp a little bit. And I want to add a bump. So attach the color to height and then attach normal to both of the principled BSDFs. Then connect your mix shader to material output. And if you notice, the bump is too heavy right now. So let's play around with the strength. If I give it a value of 0.1, it's going to look better. You could even go further down and adjust how much of the bump you want to be visible. You can also play around with the sizing of it. I will enable denoising because it's kind of noisy right now. So yes, this is how the basic setup of the texture looks. In my use case, I did add roughness maps and also normal maps, but this is just the most basic setup of it. You can go ahead and make this your own. Add your own textures, even add a base color that you like. But I use a very simple setup, which is just using geometry pointiness. If you play along with the black and white value, you can see that that controls how much of your materials are mixing. You can also change the colors to whatever you like. on both sides and make this your own. And for the last part, I want to add the armature. So I'll go ahead and enable the armature and disable the viewport shading and enable viewport overlays. I will hide the shader panel. I'll go into front view and I will select our character and then shift select our armor. Then I'll go to weight paint, go to weights, transfer weights, change vertex mapping to nearest face interpolated, and source layers from by name. This will automatically transfer all of the weight paints from our character to our armor. So if we go back to object mode, select the armor. Now I want to go to modifiers, add armature, and make sure that preserve volume is enabled. Then select our character as our object. And now if I go into pose mode and move around the bones, you can see that our armor is moving with our character. So that is a very easy way by which you can just transfer your weights from your character to your armor. That is it for this video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. Wish you a great day. Bye.